Imagine this. A quiet suburban neighborhood turns into a battlefield when overzealous HOA enforcers smash their SUV right into a family's backyard shed, destroying years of cherished memories. But what happens next is pure genius. Grandpa, the silent hero, devises a plan to make their vehicle disappear forever, crushed into oblivion without a single word spoken. Stick around for this epic tale of petty revenge that will have you cheering. Hey everyone, if you're hooked on wild HOA stories, Karen meltdowns, and property disputes that escalate to insane levels, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's dive into this 3-chapter saga of neighborhood tyranny and sweet silent justice. In the sleepy suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets under the watchful eyes of the Homeowners Association, the Thompson family had carved out their slice of paradise. Nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac, their modest 2-story home boasted a backyard that was the envy of many. Thanks largely to Grandpa Elias, a retired mechanic whose hands had built empires from scrap metal. Elias, with his weathered face etched by decades of tinkering in garages, had transformed the yard into a haven. At its heart stood the shed, a sturdy structure he'd erected himself 30 years ago, filled with tools, old car parts, and mementos from his late wife's gardening days. Roses climbed its walls, and inside shelves groaned under the weight of history. Faded photographs, rusted wrenches that had fixed countless engines, and even a vintage motorcycle he'd restored for his grandson. Young Alex, the family, Alex's parents, Mark and Lisa, along with Alex himself at 16, lived in harmony with the neighborhood's rules, or so they thought. But the HOA, led by the iron-fisted president, Mrs. Harriet Clean, had other ideas. Harriet, a woman in her late 50s with a penchant for powers, suits, and pursed lips, enforced regulations with the zeal of a dictator. Her HOA cops, as the residents mockingly called them, were a pair of hired security guards who patrolled in a gleaming black SUV, issuing fines for the slightest infractions. A weed in a flower bed, a basketball hoop left out overnight, or, heaven forbid, a shed that didn't match the approved color palette. Whispers in the community spoke of Harriet's vendetta against anyone who dared question her authority, and the Thompsons had unwittingly stepped into her crosshairs. It started innocently enough. Grandpa Elias had painted the shed a soft blue, reminiscent of his wife's favorite sky, but it clashed with the HOA's mandated earth tones. A notice arrived in the mail demanding a repaint within 30 days or face escalating penalties. Mark, ever the diplomat, appealed at the next board meeting, explaining the sentimental value, but Harriet dismissed it with a wave, her voice dripping with condescension. Though no words were exchanged in this tale, only actions that screamed louder. Tensions simmered as the deadline approached. Elias, stubborn as the steel he once welded, refused to change a thing. He spent evenings in the shed, polishing his tools, his silence, a fortress against the encroaching bureaucracy. Then came the fateful night. Storm clouds gathered as the family sat down to dinner, unaware that the HOA cops were on the prowl. Earlier that day, Harriet had spotted the unchanged shed during her routine inspection, and fueled by her unyielding need for control, dispatched her enforcers with orders to document the violation up close. The SUV, a bulky beast of a vehicle emblazoned with the HOA logo, rumbled down the street. In their haste, or perhaps deliberate aggression, the driver misjudged the turn into the Thompsons' driveway. Tires screeched as the vehicle veered off, slamming into the backyard fence with a thunderous crash. Wood splintered, and the SUV plowed forward, ramming straight into the shed's side. The impact echoed through the neighborhood like a declaration of war. Shards of blue paint flew, tools scattered across the grass, and the vintage motorcycle crumpled under the weight. Elias, alerted by the noise, rushed out first, his eyes widening at the destruction. The shed's wall caved in, exposing its innards to the rain that began to pour. Mark and Lisa followed, their faces paling as they surveyed the wreckage. Alex stood frozen, staring at the mangled remains of his grandfather's pride. The HOA cops emerged from the SUV, unscathed but flustered, quickly snapping photos before retreating, leaving the family to deal with the aftermath. No apologies came, only a follow-up citation blaming the Thompsons for obstructing access with their non-compliant structure. As the family sifted through the debris that night, Elias's hands trembled, not with fear, but with a quiet rage. He picked up a bent wrench, his mind already worry, like the engines he knew so well. The shed, once a sanctuary, now lay in ruins. But from its ashes, a plan began to form in the old man's thoughts. A retribution as silent as his demeanor, one that would turn the tables without a whisper. The rain continued to fall, washing away the evidence of the crash, but not the resolve building in Elias's heart. As dawn broke, the family gathered to assess the full damage, knowing this was far from over. The morning after the crash dawned crisp and unforgiving, casting long shadows over the Thompson family's backyard, where the ruined shed stood like a wounded sentinel. Elias rose early, as was his habit, surveying the chaos with a stoic gaze. Splintered wood littered the grass, mingled with shattered glass from the shed's small window, and the HOA's SUV had left deep tire ruts in the soil, a scar that mirrored the family's growing indignation. Mark spent the day on the phone with insurance adjusters, navigating a labyrinth of paperwork that seemed designed to frustrate, while Lisa documented every detail with photos, her movements precise and determined. Alex, skipping his usual weekend plans, helped his grandfather salvage what they could. Tools bent, but salvageable. Photographs waterlogged, yet precious. The neighborhood buzzed with subdued gossip. Neighbors peeked over fences, offering sympathetic nods, but little more. Fearful of drawing Harriet Klein's wrath, the HOA president, undeterred, escalated her campaign. Notices proliferated, fines for the unsafe structure, demands for immediate demolition, and veiled threats of liens on the property. The family's mailbox overflowed with official-looking envelopes, each one a jab at their autonomy. Elias, however, remained outwardly calm, his silence a veiling within. In the quiet hours after the family retired, he retreated to his basement workshop, a dimly lit space filled with relics from his mechanic days. Hydraulic lifts, welding torches, and blueprints yellowed with age. There he pondered the SUV, that symbol of HOA oppression, now parked arrogantly at Harriet's residence, as if nothing had happened. He knew the vehicle well. During his career, He'd serviced similar models, understanding their mechanics intimately. An idea took root. Inspired by his years at the junkyard, where he'd crushed countless cars into compact cubes. The local scrapyard, run by an old friend, housed a massive crusher, a behemoth machine that could reduce any vehicle to scrap in minutes. But how to deliver the SUV there without detection? Ilias's mind mapped out the logistics with the precision of an engineer. He recalled the HOA cops' routine patrols, predictable as clockwork, and Harriet's habit of leaving the vehicle unattended during board meetings. Over the next few days, he observed from afar, noting patterns: the SUV's parking spot, the guard's brakes, the quiet back roads leading to the scrapyard on the town's outskirts. Subtly, he enlisted the family's unwitting aid. Mark, thinking at a coping mechanism, helped Elias repair a tow truck he'd kept in storage, a relic from his garage days, now tuned silently in the dead of night. Lisa focused on legal countermeasures, researched HOA bylaws, uncovering loopholes that could buy them time. Alex, curious about his grandfather's late-night activities, assisted in gathering supplies, heavy-duty chains, lock-picking tools disguised as everyday items, and a GPS jammer sourced from Elias's vast network of mechanic contacts. No words were needed. Elias's gestures and demonstrations conveyed his intent, binding the family in a web of quiet conspiracy. As weeks passed, the HOA's pressure mounted. Harriet organized a petition drive, rallying compliant neighbors to demand the shed's removal. Her influence casting a pall over Willow Creek. The Thompsons faced isolation, their once friendly cul-de-sac turning hostile. Yet, Ilias's plan solidified. He scouted the scrapyard under the guise of selling old parts, confirming the crusher's availability during off hours. His friend, sympathetic to tales of bureaucratic overreach, agreed to a midnight operation. No questions asked. The family, sensing the shift in Ilias's demeanor from resigned to resolute, braced for what was coming. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Elias tested the tow truck in a secluded field, its engine purring softly, modifications ensuring near-silent operation. The SUV, he decided, would meet its end, not with fanfare, but with the inexorable grind of metal on metal. The stage was set, the pieces in place. And as the family gathered for a tense dinner, Ilias's eyes gleamed with anticipation. The night of reckoning approached, a shadow lengthening over the HOA's reign of terror, promising a reversal as devastating as it was discreet.